Just fucking do it. Subscribe now.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and kiss my ass. I was going through slides, to see if there's anything that I wanted to add today, but I came across a doctor who's never been to the seminar, named Chung, I think, or Cheng, who a couple of years ago, about this time of the year, it wasn't on Christmas, bought a hospital for $1. And he was a non-believer, on a day of faith, supposedly, Christmas Day. He was a non-believer, but he hadn't looked enough, as none of you have, And then when he started looking, it took him a year, and he had a limited market because he did it in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands. There's not that many hospitals in the Hawaiian Islands. But he finally found one that are really motivated. So far, none of you guys have really experienced a motivated seller. I mean, really motivated. Where they give you money. And that exists. And I've told this story 1.5 jillion times. I took a refinery off a guy and he paid me $9 million. And then 4 or 5 years later, I sold it back to him for $12 million. And then he gave it back to me again. And that all had to do with something called small refiner's bias. And the government's infinite wisdom back in the day, at one time they put a $18 premium, or maybe I guess it would be a reverse premium. If you were less than a 50,000 barrel a day refinery, which is small, they paid you $18 extra per barrel. $18. So if oil was 18, you're getting $36 a barrel. Well, a plethora of refineries went up in not hours, but almost hours. And people, oil executives, school teachers had 500 barrel a day refineries in their backyard. And that went on. And then they stopped the small refineries bias. And then so there was a lot of wiggling around to get rid of them, and then they inhibited you, and they put a reverse tax, and it was a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, so we were there, and we took advantage of that. And one of the guys in the last hardcore, it sat right back there in the right-hand corner, the last day of the seminar, did a deal here in the room where the guy paid him 50,000 euros to take the healthcare business off his hands. 50,000 euros. And that was his 13th deal. He wasn't a virgin, but again, most of the people you talk to, just because you get an owner on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's the owner and he's cleaning the office out or whatever, he's the owner, but that doesn't mean he's motivated. We've had guys over the years, myself included, oh my God, God sent me to you, or sent you to me, because, I've been dealing with a broker, blah, blah, blah. And your lawyers know how to get out of the agreements you sign with brokers. I'm not here to tell you how to do that, but ask your lawyers. But they're not ironclad. Nothing's ironclad if you're willing to litigate. Nothing. Remember, most people got married for till death do us part, right? And we all know that you can break that. So if you can break that agreement, you can break any agreement. But when I was thinking about it last night, after I left you guys, and I'm trying to fall asleep, some of the guys, just as a couple of three of you figured out the best way to use LinkedIn, whether you paid or didn't pay, and you got the special sauce, et cetera, et cetera. If you spend 5% of the energy that you do looking for shortcuts, maybe even 1%, I don't know, I have no data, I haven't put any numbers together, about finding motivated sellers. And I already went through the exercise about I never spent a year or 2 years or 5 months. Never, ever, in any, including today. I just never did. Because back in the day when there was old farts that were mentoring me, they said, I know it sounds good. And this is way before PC, political correctness. Way, decades before woke. I mean, it's slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. And I ran, I ran call centers, as he did, in the Philippines. But way before that, when they used to call them boiler rooms. And I had a boiler room with 450 or so kids. And I sat up on a deal. I was a graduate student. This is on YouTube, like this. And I used to ask you what hand you wipe your ass with. And if it was the right hand, I used to tape, with duct tape, the phone. These are old-time phones. To your hand. And you used to have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. And if I didn't see the glitter, much hotter lights than this, if I didn't see the glitter off that fucking duct tape, boom, like the flash I'm on you. Why aren't you talking to somebody? Because some of the smart asses, like a couple of you in this room, figured out, well, if I just held the phone up there, he was thinking I'm talking. But then we got this thing that it was voice operated, and so I could tell from a panel whether but then you could just go bah, 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 and I couldn't tell. But and everybody, I say you make 300 calls a day and you become, when our two children got out of undergraduate, they didn't take a gap year, but whatever they call it, they took some time off before they went to graduate school. Actually, one of them couldn't get into graduate school, so I said, you make 300 calls a day and you'll lead the nation, you'll lead the world. And I got that 300, and I didn't change it from the early 70s when I was running a boiler room as a graduate student. And they got out of school because normally when you get, even the good schools, they put you in some sort of sales intern program when you join the big companies, Fortune 500 companies, sales intern. Which means just a gopher. Of course, now it's hard to get people to go get you coffee. I got a whole other story about that. And both my daughter and my youngest son asked me, why do you know 300 is going to do it? And I said, well, when you go through the training program, they're going to give you some goals. And they're going to give you some stretch goals. I don't believe in stretch goals. Stretch goals, meaning that, if you really, really want to do it, et cetera. And none of those goals, or stretch goals, thank you, are going to be anywhere near and approach 300 calls, even a week, let alone a day. And so the guys and the gals that initially were up there that believed that you had to make 300, just like the autistic kid thought he had to make 2,000. And remember, then I showed you a slide, 5 calls a day. Remember? 5 calls a day. I showed you 1,800 calls to Glory, 1,500 calls to Glory, meaning they did a deal and they were a millionaire, and then 1,200 calls. And I said, words to the effect, I know you're not going to make 1,800. And the 1,800, I believe, was Bruce the Whipple. Okay. Then the 1,500, you do 1,200. And I know you're not going to work. Okay, so that's 1,200 a year. That's 100 a month. And I know you're only going to work 5 days a week. Remember, I went through all that? And so it's 5 calls a day. 5 calls to a seller, an owner that can make a decision. 5. I don't believe anybody in this room's done that. Okay? So just imagine if you're doing 300 and you get 15 or 20 motivated sellers a day. Then you're like a Nelly. Well, he's not the quickest billionaire we had, but he's one of the quickest. Doing it the old-fashioned way. So all these things, and you pile them all together, and it's like trying to put 5 pounds of shit in a 3-pound bag. I mean, you have so much data, so many tools, scripts, and webinar, and it's flowing out. Some people use the excuse, well, I don't know where to start. Well, and then EJ came up with the idea of QLA for Dummies, okay? For those of you that haven't read it, even at this stage of your life, I would read it, QLA for Dummies, okay? But yet still, as I said late yesterday afternoon when ranting and raving, when I was crying about the iron lung kid, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. But it's not like you got to search. It's not like a blind man in the dark, because you've got so many tools. Some people, really professional salespeople, have accused me, you give them too many tools. Well, I don't believe in that, because you can never have too much sex. When I was young, I used to believe that. I I believe it now, even though I'm old and I can't do that, but you can never have too much sex. But you have the tools. You have the wherewithal. And I told you the Peter that the Viking bitch on the webinar that she alluded to was Peter Harasti, and they went to the same hardcore. And he went home. Now, most of you are English as your first language. Some of you aren't. And he went home and he took everything, and he took about 3 weeks, and he translated everything to Hungarian. Okay. Well, some of you, your English is so poor, maybe you got to have somebody help you come in and translate it to real English. And then he alphabetized it, and then he did it 1 to 100, so he knew where everything was. And so by the end of 3 weeks, it was like a textbook that he put together himself. And then he went forward, and although it took him still 17 months to do the first deal, if you remember, and it's the guy that was jerking him off, and I told him the guy's lying to you, blah, blah, blah. And in one case, on the second deal he worked on, the guy had already sold the fucking thing. Okay, he had signed the special purchase agreement, and they were just jerking Peter around just for fun. Okay, and there are people like that. And I told you in the first seminar, there will be looky-loos, they used to call them, that just want to come and kick the tires. But more importantly, there'll be people that, I wonder, they may have thought about succession planning. But what's the business really worth? So one of the cheapest ways to find out what's the business is worth is put it on the market and see what kind of offers you get. Doesn't mean you're going to complete any offers. And a lot of people do that. And unfortunately, a lot of people jerk around a lot of the kids. And I'm concerned about all the kids. I want them to succeed, but I'm more concerned about people that have come here. Okay? But the tools are there. Now, I only had 6 emails last night to this morning, which is extremely low, but it's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. In the 90s, I still have 100, 150 emails. Not anymore. Not anymore. Even though you've heard me say 75% of all transactions in the world are done in the last 45 to 60 days of the year. That's the entire world. But 75% are done in the last 45 to 60 days of the year, no matter where you are. So deals are getting done. Right up to, and I told you, we didn't celebrate Christmas at home. We celebrated Christmas when I got home in January. And my wife said, where's Daddy? Where's Daddy? He says, well, because the other kids have got their toys and running around up and down. And he says, well, Christmas is going to be late because Daddy will celebrate it when Daddy's home. Because I was normally someplace New Year's Eve, pounding out a deal. And I will neither confirm nor deny that some of the agreements that we signed at 6 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day got dated 10 o'clock in the evening, New Year's Eve. I've been accused of that. Never in court. But they wanted to get it done just as bad as I wanted to get it done. And lawyers and occasionally accountants. But you don't know you're getting a good deal until your accountants and lawyers get in a fist fight because they got raped or they feel they got raped. And your guys are gloating. That's happened to me 4 or 5 times. I knew I got, and I don't look for the best deal. Remember, I told you that already. But I knew that I got a good deal when half the team is celebrating with champagne and cake, and the other half are fighting it out in the not the drawing room, but the boardroom. But you have all these things, and yet it still doesn't get done. And I said it, and I'm not trying to put a dim light over Christmas, but this ain't for everybody. Guys, it just isn't. I said that. I gave my first seminar May 1993 at the Sheraton Hotel in Los Angeles. Had 60 people. And the seminar started at 8 in the morning, ended at 8 in the evening. And then I had no breaks. I've said this before. No lunch, no coffee, no water, no fuck all. And at 8 o'clock, I started Q&A. And the Q&A for that day ended at 4 o'clock in the morning from 8 till 4. And I didn't leave till every question was asked. Now, just imagine having a group like you, instead of, the 15, we had 4 times as many. How many questions? I'd still be answering questions. And the same material we covered in a week, without webinars, etc. And a person that was at that seminar was Bruce the fucking Whipple. 7 of the people that were at that seminar are up there. 7. And they asked questions. I remember Bruce even says, Dan, can I get you some coffee? No, I'm fine. And I used to ramp up and down, and I had a writing crop that if you looked even remotely like you were getting tired, boom, I'd hit right in front of you. I could just see the fat on him would be going up and like this. And occasionally legend has it that I hit him by accident because I got too close to him with the riding crop. You know how when you see in the movies the knife and you go, nah, 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 nah. Well, occasionally you get stuck in the finger, right, with a knife. But I got 100, 120 emails during the same time period back 30 years ago. Now I get 6. And 5 of them were from Kat, I believe. Yep. I don't believe I know for a fact. 5 of them were for her. And I think 1 was from EJ, maybe. Did I get any? I don't think I got any real email. Not that our emails aren't real, but I mean from somebody else. And that makes it easier because the people aren't serious. So the job is to find the really motivated sellers. And you're not in 5, even though you can do it in 5 calls a day if you find the sellers. I mean, you should be able, guys that are, full-time surgeons can find 5 sellers in a day. Because we have full-time surgeons that are working this program, one of which is down in Oxford right now. So if you're not doing anything else other than this, I can't believe that you can't do it. I know that you can't do it if you're serious. If you're serious. Is that for me? Thank you. Who did you see last night? Thank you. Okay, and who's part 4? Oh, I wish if I had been. I was thinking about you and family heritage going back hundreds of years. And even though Rockefeller wasn't hundreds of years ago, it was 120, 140 years ago, something like that. Fuck. And I don't know. Well, I know a couple of the Rockefellers, but they're old gits. The one was senator, and the one that married. No, he didn't marry. Who married Marilyn Monroe? Which one of the? Was it a Rockefeller? No, somebody like that. Anyway, and the wasted lives, and they roll over in their graves to know what the fucking happened. We had a guy that in the mid-90s, 95-ish, that his family had come over on the Mayflower, back whenever that was, And he was okay, but it took him 3 or 4 generations to get to somebody that was okay, because they had a whole string of 100 years or so that they were worthless pieces of shit. But you've got an opportunity to start your own dynasty, as they say here. From this day forward or when you leave. Some of you have already started. But it all starts with finding motivated sellers. And if I were you, and I've said this before, I would hunt big companies that are getting rid of assets, just like Anelli. I gave you Anelli's work plan. And about 25 or even maybe 50% of the time, they'll do the financing. Because if you catch them at this time of the year, they know that you're not going to get financing. We'll finance it. Now, Jesus Christ. It's like tying your shoelaces. But I've said this for 31 years, just as I've said about the government contracts. And even though I use Raymond as an example, God love him, it's 822 fucking days, and that scares most of the people off. It scared me off. I did it in about 25 or 30 days. But I can't even begin to say that I would wait 822 days, even though it was a big deal. and it made him an instant multimillionaire. Yes, sir.
The firms that are offloading assets, do you find that they're trying to get a higher multiple? Or
No. If the board, let's say, meets in January or February, and they say, okay, and this is not, okay, I see. A board could be this many people, okay? And we're going to get rid of the whatever division. It's like the DEI or DI, they're getting rid of all the money they're spending on that. Okay, and you're in charge of that. We want this shit off the balance sheet this fiscal year. And 70, 80% of the companies are on fiscal year January to December. There's a few that are different than that, but mostly okay. So I'm telling you on January 18th or 9th, whatever it is, okay. And so then you'll have your team, but we will have told you probably in November, December, early December, to get ready, be prepared to answer questions if there are any questions, okay? So you already know the multiples are 8.6, the universe, okay? That's not a distress sale. That's 8.6 good times. So in the beginning, you'll put your guys to work to sell it, and you'll know some people in the industry that you'll be able to sell off assets in a week because they compete against you in the same market, the Houston market or the Calgary market, whatever it is. And so those will be easy sales. But it's not just one thing you got to sell. It's probably 15 or 18 companies you got to sell. So in the beginning, they're looking for 8 or 9. By the time summer ends, in July or August, they're looking for 5 or 6. And by the time now, they're looking for 2, or just to unload the motherfucker, and they'll finance it, or they sell the hospital for $1. So it's a movable feast, the multiples. And you have some people that just get stuck with the assets because the you in the deal is a prick, and he says, well, I'm not going to, and the benchmark is, when you're in a big company, especially a public company, you never want to sell assets for less than book value. You don't want to have to write down your asset because the division you sold off. So it'll really depend on your predecessors. What did they buy the shit for to put it on the balance sheet? Okay. Now, in some cases, they overpaid because it works the other way. I want to be in this fucking market. It's January. I want to see assets on the balance sheet that make sense. If they don't add the make sense part, if it makes sense vis-a-vis what our strategic yada yada is, okay? But some guys will, and the market's 8 and they'll pay 12, okay? Now, in a multi-billion-dollar balance sheet, who notices? Until you try to get rid of the shit. Then it notices. And then all of a sudden, he's 38 years old, he's taking early retirement. I always laugh. I'm retired to spend more time with my family. Bullshit, he doesn't have a family, The guy's a eunuch that lives in a fucking phone booth. And by the way, phone booth. I told the last couple seminars when the kids were boxing, I'm a phone booth fighter. I might have said it here because I can't bounce off the ground anymore and shit like that. But I can fight in a phone booth because I can't fall down. And it's whoever can hit hardest, basically. Well, I just saw a thing last night before I went to bed. Here in the UK, those red phone booths you see, a new sport has developed, and it's called phone booth fighting. And so, and I looked at the kids, and they kind of look like you skinny wimps. And I got to look into that. Cat, by the way, I want you to look into that. See where it is and see if they have any age divisions. I could do phone today. I could do that because my trouble is I can't. And when I had the professional, pardon. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so the professional guy that I used until I fucked my wrists up was a middleweight, and he was about 5 times faster. And so 1 out of 5 punches, he was still there when it went by his head, And if I try to dance around too much, my balance, I don't have that balance anymore. But in a phone booth that's that big, I got no place to fall down. I can actually bounce off. So we're going to look into that and see if I can do that. That sounds like fun. But another thing about scaring yourself, another thing I thought of when I was trying to sleep last night, I already screamed and yelled that you don't do that for the most part, okay? And you don't think it's important, but it is important. And you know that up until I was 60, I spent about 120 to 125% of every dollar I ever made to make sure I had no backup plan. Now, I've only had a couple of people do that in 30 years. Okay, and I understand why they don't do it, but I also know that they don't understand that means they have a backup. That means they have a cushion. And one of the reasons I was very successful early in my career is I had no cushion. Zero cushion. I had to at least duplicate what I did the month before or the year before, or I went broke. And that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, people say. But I didn't feel it until I'm 60. If I had it to do over again, I'd probably do it until maybe I was only 45 or 50. But then I did it until I was 60, and that's when Sally and I decided to downsize, which I've already gone through, and get rid of all the stuff that we had accumulated over the years. But I look for controversy. I don't look to avoid controversy, whether it's a deal, not just because I might not have got the best deal and so I walk out of the room, but I don't want to get out of the habit of walking out of the room and being willing to walk out of the room over any deal. No matter, you remember TK and he's rubbing his thighs about the deal, 9-figure deal that he didn't get and he still feels bad about. Okay, well, I don't have any of those that I feel bad about. I certainly have plenty of deals that I didn't get because of my antics, as they used to call it back in the 70s and 80s. But we're trained for the same reason your parents are used to 2 paychecks a month or whatever that, or one, however you get paid. And you become used to 2 paychecks a month. You know, when you walk out the door and you've only got $11,000 in the bank and you're running 175 employees. The Onassis people said, you think your employees are loyal? And they were talking about their own employees. How many paychecks will your employees miss to show their loyalty? Yeah. Some won't even miss one. And you're ostensibly, theoretically, purportedly looking out for their interests, right? Okay. Yeah, I mean, believe me, you're bending over backwards. And I'm not saying for you to treat your employees not very fairly, but a little harsh reality for the employees is good. It is good. And I've bought companies where 4th generation family are there, and they went to sleep 2 generations ago. And so, and the board members that have experience will understand that. They'll be reticent to axe those people because maybe they should have been axed back 20 years in their 40-year career. But all that's not your problem. As long as you can make them work, like the Viking bitch can make it work. And then loyalty, etc. What happens? They rolled over on her. There's no good word to describe that. But it happens. I could just show you those kind of cases from now till the new year. But one's enough. And you saw a couple, I showed you a couple emails. It happens no matter, what your intentions are. And as Costa Glatzos told me on the Onassis train going from Chicago to San Diego decades ago, no good deed goes unpunished, Mr. Peña. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say I do my first exit in 2028, okay? I buy myself...
You said exit, right? Exit.
First exit in 2028. And I got this cash, and so I don't lose momentum. I buy a house, a couple of cars, and then I do a Cook Island trust, put the money aside, and then start all over again.
Well,
like the money doesn't exist.
All that will take you a year. I mean, to set up trust, we just signed our trust papers a couple of weeks ago, and Sally and I had been working on them since the 3rd week of January this year. If you're going to do it right. I've done it twice wrong. And so, Because when I took 85% of all my money that I had in 1987, I think it was, I don't think I know it was. In 1987, I thought the 15% that I left over was more than enough money to carry me the rest of my life. So, because when you have a trust that's a real trust that you can't fuck with and you can't take money out willy-nilly, and you have real trustees, the trustees have to approve your fucking withdrawals or what you want to do that's outside the scope of the trust. And I put guys that I've known a long time. But one time that I wanted to take out $10 million for, this is about 15, 18 years ago, they said no. Now, I was more shocked than the Viking bitch was when she woke up from the coma she was in to find out that they were trying to steal her company. I was more shocked than that. I made these motherfuckers, okay? And then they say no. And then they told me why afterwards, after I cooled down a little. We're afraid your kids will sue us. Now, see, you don't even think about shit like that. Because the kids are the ultimate, they're not the first line beneficiaries, but they're the ultimate beneficiaries down 2 or 3 generations down the road. You know, they'll sue us. Dan, I mean. And so they said, we said no. And they said, no, but, you know, can we do this? And maybe if we guarantee this and do some other hocus fucking pocus. So you can come up with the 10 million. But I needed 10 million in Monday, and I asked them Thursday. So you can't do all the fucking hocus pocus over a weekend, okay? And if I had Bitcoins, though, I could have saved myself, kids. Just remember, if I had fucking, you know, 50 million in Bitcoins, I could have easily at that time. But I didn't, as they say up here. And they said no. Okay, that's enough.